NASA's mission is to explore the unknown.
There's more that we don't know than we do know. That's just the nature of the universe.
In the search for answers, it launches its scientists into space. Its craft beyond the limits of the solar system.
Taking risks is part of making discoveries.
Space exploration is like lighting a match, and we don't know what lurks in the shadows.
Hey, what is that?
There could be anything out there.
A malfunction on the Mir space station leaves 2 astronauts trapped in hard vacuum.
You can survive in your spacesuit, but only for so long.
In an emergency situation, suits become your worst enemy.
NASA's Pluto probe reveals a bizarre alien landscape.
There are mountains, big glaciers. What's going on with this strange little world?
And a circle of glowing lights hovers in the skies near the nerve center of the U.S. space program.
This isn't some little farm in the middle of nowhere. This is over Houston.
When you see a circle of lights in the sky that's unidentified, a lot of people go straight to aliens.
NASA's missions have uncovered disturbing anomalies.
Okay, we're seeing 3 or 4 objects.
There are 3 objects
that continue to perplex our finest scientific minds. These are NASA's unexplained files. An urgent scientific research project forces NASA to use Russia's crumbling Mir space station.
The Mir space station is a potential death trap, and everyone knows that.
Will 2 astronauts pay the ultimate price?
They're locked out of the space station. They're essentially trapped in space.
The clock is ticking.
September 1997. Russia's Mir space station is falling apart. Over the last 7 months, a sequence of unsettling incidents has endangered the lives of NASA astronauts.
There was a fire, and it was caused by the malfunction of an oxygen candle device, which actually burns certain chemicals to release oxygen.
A fireball shot out of it across the spacecraft, actually trapped the crew members away from the rescue vehicle that they'd have to get into if they had to evacuate the space station.
Astronaut Jerry Linenger barely escapes with his life.
Russia completely downplays the fire. They say it lasted for only 90 seconds. But when Jerry Linenger finally communicates with NASA, he tells them it lasted for 14 minutes and it was out of control.
Soon after the fire, a spacecraft on a routine resupply mission collides with Mir.
Again, disaster strikes. The resupply ship crashes into the Spectre module. The hull is cracked, oxygen vents into space. The solar array is destroyed and the Mir begins to rotate out of control. Mir is adrift for 2 weeks.
NASA knows how dangerous Mir is, but a medical research program into cures for AIDS urgently requires an experiment in zero-G conditions. Mir is the only zero-G lab in existence.
They want to send the astronaut David Wolf up to the space station Mir with the Russians, but Mir's kind of plagued by a lot of issues, a lot of problems.
Astronaut David Wolf becomes a mission specialist on Mir Expedition 24.
So on September 25th, David lifts off to fly up to the Mir space station. Straight away, he starts to notice lots of problems on board, specifically condensation. He sees large balls of essentially slimy, gooey condensate mixed in with slime.
Right from the start, Mir's problems hamper Wolf's mission.
There were numerous power outages on the Mir. In November, there were 4 days that they went without power.
Despite all the problems, he's actually able to get some very valuable science completed and get some of the experiments done that are on a very long list.
As a member of Mir crew, Wolf must also assist with the maintenance of the space station. He prepares for his first spacewalk alongside experienced cosmonaut Anatoly Solovyev.
Spacewalks are considered, I think, to be one of, if not the most dangerous things that we do.
Wolf and Solovyev conduct an extensive examination of the station's exterior, searching for signs of wear and damage.
They've been out there for 3 hours. Everything's been going just according to plan, smoothly, and it's time to head back into the space station.
At the end of the scheduled EVA, they climb into Mir's airlock, ready to repressurize.
Once you're in the airlock, you think that's it, you're safe. But really, you're only halfway there.
When they try to seal the airlock's outer door behind them, it refuses to close.
Until the outer hatch is sealed, you can't repressurize the airlock, and without repressurizing the airlock, there's no way to open the inner door.
They're locked out of the space station. They're essentially trapped in space.
3 hours after they started the EVA, the astronauts are running out of air.
The longer you're trapped outside of your capsule, you have to be afraid of overconsumption of your oxygen resources because they're very limited quantities.
A buildup of carbon dioxide could kill them before they run out of air.
Ultimately, CO2 concentrations will build up inside the suit, becoming toxic at a certain level, which will lead to asphyxiation.
For the next 4 hours, they make repeated attempts to fix the outer seal.
There's one last desperate hope for them, and that's to use one of the other modules of the space station as an airlock.
Their only hope of survival is to turn one of Mir's habitation modules into an improvised airlock.
The problem with that solution is that that module is not designed for guys in big, bulky spacesuits to be crawling in and out of it.
But both astronauts are connected to the station's exterior by life-preserving tethers. To get into the habitation module, they'll have to disconnect.
While the tethers usually just keep you from floating off into space, most people don't realize that the tethers also help regulate the suit temperature. Once the tether is unhooked, you've got 5 minutes before you're cooked alive inside your suit.
The plan is risky, but the alternative is a slow death by asphyxiation.
They disconnect, but instantly the heat makes their suit visors fog up, and they're blind.
Struggling to see, the astronauts feel their way into the habitation module.
They have to move quickly, but moving quickly in a suit means exerting a lot of energy. You're going to heat up, and you're going to produce even more fog inside the suit.
Without their tethers, the astronauts are at risk of heat stroke, and time is slipping away.
After a tremendous amount of effort, they're able to bundle themselves into the temporary airlock, get the outer hatch shut, and then get back into the Mir space station.
What should have been a 4-hour EVA became a grueling 12-hour fight for survival. Despite the close call, the Mir space station remains in service for another 3 years.
When you go to an aging space station, you're going to expect some problems, but not the serious ones that happened.
A NASA probe discovers something impossible on the surface of Pluto.
Pluto just blows everyone's mind.
There's mountains and valleys on this tiny planet 3 billion miles away. How can that be?
Pluto should be geologically dead.
What's going on with this strange little world?
As NASA missions push farther out towards the limits of our solar system, we're discovering more and more evidence of forces we don't understand. July 14th, 2015. 3 billion miles from Earth, NASA's New Horizon probe begins the first flyby of Pluto.
We've seen images of Pluto from Hubble, from ground-based telescopes, but this is the first time we're ever going to see anything on the surface.
What Pluto looks like up close and personal is anyone's guess.
Even at the speed of light, it takes more than 4 hours for images from the probe to reach scientists on Earth.
We began to see this really strange, dark, mysterious surface.
The pictures reveal something totally unexpected, towering above the bleak landscape of ice.
So we see Pluto has mountains, big mountains.
Everybody is shocked. No one was expecting to find features quite like this on Pluto.
We expect the surface of Pluto to be much like the other icy moons and planets. A surface of ice with a smattering of craters. How wrong we were.
The mysterious mountains are as high as the Rockies. The discovery prompts scientists to speculate how mountains formed on this cold, barren world.
On Earth, we get mountain ranges because of plate tectonics. They sit on top of the planet, and because we have this molten core, they move against each other, and as they push up against each other, they create a mountain range.
But scientists believe Pluto does not have a molten core.
We're pretty certain plate tectonics isn't happening on Pluto. It's frozen. It has a little core of solid rock in the inside and a big thick layer of solid ice. You can't have it convecting and moving around and causing a colliding of crust to make mountain ranges like we have on Earth.
With tectonics ruled out, scientists consider what other force could be at work on Pluto.
One other way that mountains can be formed in other bodies of the solar system is just from gravity.
We know from looking at other objects, moons of Jupiter for example, that sometimes the moons can interact with the surface, a cracking, a warping, and this drives mountains, volcanoes, and big rifts and valleys. Maybe the same thing is happening at Pluto with Charon.
Charon is the largest of Pluto's 5 orbiting bodies. It travels around the dwarf planet every 6 days. But Charon is tiny compared to Jupiter's moons.
So could these forces between Pluto and Charon be driving these mountains? Doesn't seem to be likely. They're in a very tight orbit, and so it's a very steady behavior between them. It's not driving, warping, and changing, and constantly varying.
If Charon's pull isn't creating the mysterious mountains, what other cosmic forces could be at work?
Another explanation is that Pluto has just been bombarded with objects from the Kuiper Belt, which is this massive ring of millions of rocks flying around outside the orbit of Neptune, smashing into each other.
The process of bodies coming from outside, striking another body, excavating it, and creating ramparts of craters, which maybe later on, by some process, get eroded down, so all you see are mountains.
If enough of these Kuiper Belt objects hit Pluto in the right way, it's possible that it could look like there are valleys and mountains on the surface of this planet, but that's not what's happening here.
We see these mountains on Pluto, they're sticking up, they're pointy, but they don't look like impact craters. They don't look like they've been formed by something hitting the surface. Just doesn't look right.
A potential clue to the mystery of the mountains comes from images of a vast, curiously flat plain next to the giant peaks.
One of the most exotic surfaces on Pluto is Sputnik Planum. Big, white area, expanse of ice.
The massive alien ice sheet is like nothing we have on Earth. It's ice, but not as we know it.
What these images are showing is frozen carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen on the surface of Pluto that could be moving similarly to how glaciers move on Earth. No one expected to see anything that looks like glaciers on Pluto. This is fascinating.
This frozen desert inspires a new theory that glacial activity could have created the mile-high mountains.
So we see this big glacial system on Pluto. Could that be causing the mountains? Could it be carving out and leaving the mountains behind?
It's possible that Pluto in the past has had glaciers. Glaciers of nitrogen ice, a much softer, more volatile ice than water, and actually just scoured these mountains and made them look kind of like glacial features look on the Earth.
The theory so far remains unproven. For now, Pluto's mountains are still an enigma.
We're always surprised during these events when we go by an alien body, and it's not so much a failure of thought, it's a failure of imagination.
It's a mystery, but things behave on Pluto very differently than they do on Earth, and we're still trying to figure it out.
Still to come, 2 amateur radio enthusiasts become international celebrities after revealing secret Soviet space disasters.
The brothers heard a signal which they interpreted as a man who was nearing cardiac arrest, a dying cosmonaut.
Two Italian brothers produce recordings of what they claim are secret Soviet space missions.
There's this recording that's released that seems to be of a female cosmonaut screaming in agony as her re-entry capsule burns up in the atmosphere.
Are they evidence of a massive cover-up?
Almost half of the original Cosmonaut group vanished before flying, and they vanished from the group photographs as well.
They were airbrushed from history.
The darkness of space hides many secrets. Few people have the technology to see or hear what happens beyond our own planet. Fewer still can be trusted. February 1961. The space race enters a new and dangerous phase. Yuri Gagarin's triumphant manned mission is still 2 months away. Two Italian brothers have front row seats for the action.
The two most famous private space listeners were the Utica Cordelia brothers in Turin, Italy. Even as NASA and the Soviets had multi-million-dollar communication rigs, they were using home-built shortwave equipment to tune in to both American and Russian spaceflight.
Achille and Giovanni are self-taught radio enthusiasts who built their own apparatus to monitor radio transmissions from space.
The brothers scavenged equipment, World War II surplus, donated equipment, whatever they could find, and made a listening post in a building outside of Turin with an antenna on a roof that they would point by hand at outer space.
The brothers' home-built radio surveillance rig gives them an inside track on Soviet space activity.
These brothers were listening to signals, interpreting the speed to the signals, guessing about the altitude of the satellites, and learning what was going on, even if official sources wouldn't talk about it.
Weeks before Yuri Gagarin officially becomes the first man in space, the brothers make a shocking announcement. They claim to have tracked and recorded a manned Russian mission already orbiting our planet.
The brothers heard a signal, a repetitive signal, which they interpreted as a heartbeat. They played their tape to their father, who was a cardiologist, and he concluded from the high rate, the high pulse rate, that it was a man who was nearing cardiac arrest, a dying cosmonaut.
Could this recording really be evidence of secret Soviet missions? The brothers' story explodes in the world's press, who are eager to highlight a Russian failure.
People are thinking, are the Soviets telling us everything about their track record in space? Are there cosmonauts who have paid the ultimate price and that we'll never hear about?
Experts cast doubt on the idea that Russia secretly launched a man into space.
You could do secret launches of hardware. Much harder to do a secret launch of a human being and get away with it.
There is an alternative explanation for what the brothers heard. At the time they made the recording, the Russians had just put 4 dogs into orbit on test flights.
The satellite they were listening to was carrying some dogs, and the natural heart rate of a dog is much higher than humans. If they were hearing the dog's heart rate and thought it was a person, they would misinterpret it to be a dying person.
But the truth about this recording doesn't come out for years. The brothers become famous.
In the 1960s, of course, the whole world was space crazy. Utica Cordelia brothers were very popular. They were media stars in Italy and around the world.
Riding the wave of their popularity, the brothers release another extraordinary recording, apparently showing another cosmonaut in distress.
There's this recording that's released that seems to be of a female cosmonaut screaming in agony as her re-entry capsule burns up in the atmosphere.
But expert analysis of the recording reveals inconsistencies.
Why did this female cosmonaut not adhere to standard communication protocols?
Some believe the recording could have come from a supposedly unmanned Russian spacecraft that was in space at the time, Venera 2. There are other issues with the recordings.
Did the brothers really have the kind of communications equipment capable of recording this kind of transmission?
In hindsight, the problem with the brothers' recordings is that first, no one else was hearing these signals. And secondly, they were picking them up when the satellites were supposedly thousands of miles away. They were out of range. No one else, even NASA, figured out how to do that.
Expert analysis suggests the brothers' recordings were no more than an elaborate hoax. But why was the West so quick to support to amateur radio enthusiasts wild claims about dying Russian cosmonauts?
Having two very telegenic and enthusiastic young Italians say that they had outsmarted the entire Soviet cover-up was good press.
People wanted to believe that the lead that the Soviets had was because of their disregard for the lives of their cosmonauts and not because of their technological sophistication.
The brothers did not uncover a Soviet space cover-up, but recently discovered evidence reveals that there were good reasons for the West to be suspicious.
The Soviet space program was run by their military. In the fall of 1960, the Russians had a secret mission. The problem was it exploded on launch, killing 165 people. Those deaths were not reported on because they reflected on the Soviet Union and they were a propaganda disaster. The Russians did not acknowledge that until after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Despite the evidence of a genuine cover-up, there is no doubt surrounding the greatest achievement of the Soviet space program.
Gagarin was the first man to go into space and come back alive. And he didn't know what was going to happen when he sat in that capsule. And for that, the world honors him.
A white rain, as thick as milk, falls across the Pacific Northwest.
Rain in Oregon and Washington is normal. Thick, milky rain is not normal.
It looked like skim milk.
Investigators struggle to find an explanation.
There are some who believe that this is an example of germ warfare.
When weird stuff starts falling from the sky, you want to know why.
NASA satellites have uncovered some of the most baffling mysteries of the cosmos. They have also been used to investigate bizarre phenomena on Earth. February 6, 2015. A rain of strange white fluid interrupts the morning commute across Washington State and Oregon.
Coming down, it looked normal, but when it landed, it didn't. It looked like skim milk.
The rain leaves a strange, dirty residue in its wake.
You could see people driving their cars stopped at stoplights. They had their windshield wipers going, and of course that was just smearing the white across the glass, and people looked baffled.
Local news outlets report strange concurrent events. At first, it seems like there is a simple explanation.
As this weird rain is falling, on the very same day, there's massive wildfires burning to the south. And you have to wonder, are these things connected?
The wildfires are raging over 500 miles away across California's Sierra Nevada. Hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes.
This is a good theory, because when tiny particles like smoke particles get into clouds and it rains, they can color the rain droplets, perhaps even to make this milky rain.
But the theory falls short when investigators look at weather records.
The problem with that idea is that the winds are blowing in the wrong direction. Any ash coming up from those wildfires is not going to be blown into the area where we see the rain.
Historical records reveal previous incidents which could offer clues to the mystery.
It turns out that this isn't the first time that we've had Milky rain in the Pacific Northwest. Similar incidents were reported in 1994 in a town called Oakville.
Shortly after the rains, there are reports of locals being struck down by flu-like symptoms.
The remarkable timing of the incidents fuels conspiracy theories.
There are reports from locals of black helicopters in the air just before the rainfall.
Analysis of Oakville's mysterious Milky rain adds fuel to the fire.
Apparently, the rain samples contain a mix of potentially harmful bacteria, and there are some who believe that this is an example of germ warfare.
The idea sounds like something out of the X-Files, but it has happened before.
A Senate investigation in 1977 revealed that the U.S. military had conducted no less than 239 biological warfare tests over populated portions of the United States. So this whole notion is not that far-fetched at all.
There is no evidence linking the government to the Milky rain in 1994 or in 2015. Instead, investigators turn to a disturbing image captured by NASA's Landsat satellite.
An enormous dark V hanging over the skies in Russia? That's strange.
NASA's real-time satellite streaming allows scientists to track meteorological events across the globe. The massive V in the satellite image is the result of an eruption from a Russian volcano, which occurs shortly before the Milky rain begins to fall.
Shivelich volcano is one of the more active volcanoes on Earth. It's located in Kamchatka, Russia, which lies in an area called the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire is famous for its hundreds of volcanoes.
This is a massive eruption. Volcanoes are very good at powdering rock, throwing it high in the air as dust, and then that dust can fall in rain.
Could the eruption have somehow caused Milky rain to fall thousands of miles away?
Some eruptions from Shivelich volcano have been violent enough to produce ash that can actually get all the way up into the stratosphere. When ash gets into the stratosphere, it gets caught up in the jet stream and can be transported globally.
But analysis of weather records at the time does not support the volcano theory.
It's the same problem as the wildfires. The prevailing winds near the volcano are not blowing in the right direction. They're not leading the ash toward the Pacific Northwest.
Science writer Linda Wafer conducts her own investigation into the phenomenon.
So with all these theories floating around, I decided to consult a group of scientists at Washington State University. I gave the data to geologists, a hydrochemist, a air quality specialist, and a meteorologist. And I thought, surely, with all these different backgrounds, they'll be able to figure it out.
Laboratory testing of the rain samples enables the team to come up with a theory for what's happening.
The chemical analysis of the rain showed a high sodium content. That was the clincher for us. After reviewing the data, the scientists decided conclusively that this mysterious Milky rain had originated from an ancient saline lake in southern Oregon.
Sodium in the rain explains the strange milky white color. Wayford uses meteorological data to work out how it first got into storm clouds far from the lake.
A number of things happened and they converged. So you had this ancient lake bed, pretty dried out because of a prolonged drought. Then, on the night of February 5th, a huge windstorm hit, and it had hurricane force winds in southern Oregon.
The hurricane whips up all the sodium-rich dust into the sky, where it catches the prevailing winds.
It carried the dust northward. When it hit the rainstorm, the rain brought it down, and we had Milky rain. Mother Nature threw a curveball on this one.
Strange, glowing spheres terrify pilots in the skies over wartime Germany.
The pilots who saw these objects didn't know what they were.
To investigate, the U.S. Navy assigns a little-known doctor with a big future ahead of him.
No one's ever heard of him, but he goes on to become a pivotal figure in NASA.
December 1944. U.S. Army Air Force pilot Donald Myers is flying a night mission over Germany when two unidentified glowing spheres appear alongside his plane.
Meyer described it as follows. I turned to starboard and two balls of fire turned with me. We were going 260 miles an hour and the balls were keeping right up with us.
The glowing orbs seem to shadow his plane's movements for 20 miles before they suddenly vanish.
They just seemed to follow us like the will-o'-the-wisp.
More than 100 other Allied pilots on night missions report encounters with this frightening anomaly.
These are seasoned trained combat pilots that aren't easily spooked, so they have to take these reports seriously.
The mysterious glowing balls earned the nickname the Foo Fighters.
The military high command takes this seriously enough that they actually appoint someone to look into it.
The U.S. military assigns the job of investigating the phenomenon to medical research doctor Ashton Graybill. He's little known at the time, but later becomes one of NASA's top space doctors.
He's the person who's responsible for keeping astronauts alive in space.
Investigators first considered the idea the pilots could be witnessing tests of a top-secret German weapon.
It's not an outlandish idea. Secret weapons did indeed exist during World War II. The Nazis introduced jet aircraft at the end of the war, as well as the V-1 and V-2 buzz bombs.
The Nazi V-2 rocket was the first human craft to fly into space. It was developed under conditions of total secrecy, and its technology could easily have seemed alien to pilots accustomed to propeller-driven aircraft.
It's possible that some of the reports were in fact developments or tests of weapons for airborne mines or the like that the Germans were undertaking.
But if the glowing spheres were some kind of weapon, it seems they were not directed against the pilots or the aircraft.
There was no hit, there was no airplane destroyed, which does not sound like a weapon to me.
Investigators also search for natural phenomena capable of explaining the Foo Fighter sightings.
St. Elmo's fire is a phenomenon that's really quite well understood. It's produced when the electric field around an object gets very high, and it's observed as a very strong glow around the sharply pointed tips of different parts of an object, such as the nose of an aircraft or the wingtips.
But aviation experts consider the St. Elmo's fire explanation to be unlikely.
These are highly trained pilots who have a lot of experience, and many of them had probably seen St. Elmo's fire, and they know that a sphere tracking you from behind at 250 knots at 20,000 feet is nothing like St. Elmo's fire. It doesn't look anything like it.
Graybill looks into the human body for answers.
He puts pilots through rigorous testing to find out if there's any physiological effects on nighttime flyers.
Graybill suspects the sightings could be the result of a medical phenomenon called autokinesis.
Anyone who goes into an open space and looks at a star for an extended period of time will find over time that the star starts to move around or appear to move around.
When someone suffers autokinesis, the brain misinterprets minute movements of the eyes as movements of the object they're looking at. Graybill discovers that night pilots who stare at bright lights like stars in the sky become convinced those lights are moving or even following their planes.
If you combine the concept of autokinesis with what the pilots describe, then you start to realize that the whole thing fits remarkably well.
This is what Graybill concluded was most likely the cause of Foo Fighters.
Graybill's 400-page study satisfied the U.S. military high command with its explanation of the pilot's bizarre sightings. But not everyone accepts its conclusions.
Does this explain every sighting? Probably not.
A circle of glowing lights hovers in the skies near the nerve center of the U.S. space program.
This isn't some little farm in the middle of nowhere. This is over Houston.
Footage of the strange phenomenon goes viral.
When you see a circle of lights in the sky that's unidentified, a lot of people go straight to aliens.
NASA has a special relationship with the city of Houston. Over decades, the people have grown used to strange sights in their skies. But some are still hard to explain. August 11th, 2014. A Houston resident steps outside to film a building storm. Between flashes of lightning, he captures footage of a remarkable object. A circle of lights, which seems to hover in the air.
You can see this object clearly from the ground, and it looks big.
When the footage appears online, commentators speculate on what might be causing the anomaly. One of the most popular explanations is that it is simply light reflecting down from the clouds.
One particularly interesting kind of cloud is called a noctilucent cloud, and that's formed in the upper atmosphere, and that can often produce very unusual glowing effects. It's illuminated by the sun, which is below the horizon.
Clouds do reflect light back to Earth, but in this much detail?
Other commentators suggest the unidentified object could be an example of the mysterious phenomenon known as ball lightning. These rare and mysterious orbs of light appear during and after thunderstorms.
People have been reporting ball lightning for centuries, and there are thousands of reports, and yet we still don't fully understand the phenomenon.
But the circular shape of the Houston anomaly makes this theory unlikely.
Trying to explain this case as ball lightning is ridiculous, frankly, because to have 16 balls of light in a circular formation seems completely implausible.
When multiple witnesses report similar sightings in a range of different conditions, it soon becomes clear that the lights are not caused by the weather.
On May 23rd, a Houston resident accidentally captures these same lights flying over downtown Houston.
3 months later, the formation of lights appears again.
Another Houston resident captures these same lights while filming an unusual cloud formation.
We've got multiple witness reports, and nobody is offering any credible explanations.
To UFO watchers, the location of the sightings seems like a remarkable coincidence.
Whatever this is, it's less than 30 miles away from the Johnson Space Center.
There is even wild speculation that this could be evidence of aliens spying on NASA.
In TV, in film, flying saucers are synonymous with aliens.
Some suspect the sightings could be connected with an advanced NASA craft.
NASA currently has its own flying saucer under development. It's called the LDSD.
The LDSD, or Low Density Supersonic Decelerator, is not a flying saucer from Mars. It's a flying saucer designed to help get humans to the Red Planet.
When we do get to Mars, we're going very fast. We have to spend a lot of energy and propellant that we've brought with us to slow ourselves down. Well, another way to slow yourself down is to skid across the atmosphere of Mars.
The LDSD is a two-part system. It has a thruster that initially fires to slow down the craft, and then it has a large ring that acts as an air brake.
The LDSD is not a theoretical project that exists only on a computer. NASA's actually built it and flown it twice. This thing's real. For the tests, they float the LDSD up to 120,000 feet with balloons, then ignite a rocket motor. That rocket motor takes it to 180,000 feet. When it reaches Mach 4, the rocket detaches and the LDSD drops.
The Johnson Space Center is just 20 miles from downtown Houston, but it is an unlikely venue for testing an advanced craft like the LDSD.
There are a few reasons why this is probably not the LDSD.
The first two tests didn't go as planned. The large parachute that was to slow its final descent failed to deploy.
LDSD falls a long way. This is the big reason why they're not operating it over Houston or any other city.
After months of speculation, an answer to the mystery comes from Houston locals.
As a Houstonian, I have a potential explanation that's much more down to earth. Driving along our freeways here, we have very distinct streetlights. They're circular in nature, they have multiple lights. In fact, even during the day, they sort of look like UFOs.
This is actually a lens flare created by this light. This light is actually made of a ring of lights. This ring of lights creates the lens flare that we see. And so unfortunately, we don't have a UFO to look at.
U.S. satellites monitor the Earth for signs of banned nuclear tests.
This was the Cold War. There was deep distrust between the United States and the Soviet Union.
They detect an energy signature resembling the detonation of a nuclear weapon, but the location makes no sense.
When they started to try to piece together where on the Earth this happened, they realized that it didn't happen on Earth at all.
Why would anyone explode a nuclear weapon on the moon?
I think this is insane.
August 1963. Cold War tensions are at an all-time high.
The United States alone had almost 32,000 nuclear weapons. The Soviet Union had at least another 20,000 in their own inventory. The number of weapons on both sides was completely out of control.
To prevent a potentially catastrophic escalation, the Soviet Union and the United States sign a treaty banning nuclear weapon testing above ground.
If either side breaks the test ban treaty, the Cold War is going to get very hot very fast.
The U.S. military deploys the Vela satellite surveillance network to make sure the Soviets honor the treaty.
The Vela satellites are in orbit around the Earth to detect potential nuclear detonations.
On July 2nd, 1967, scientists at the Los Alamos National Laboratory monitoring the satellite data see something disturbing. A massive surge of radiation in the atmosphere.
It looks like someone's detonating nukes.
The US, they know they haven't detonated a nuclear weapon, but they don't know who else might have.
But the source of the radiation is a mystery.
When they started to try to piece together where on the Earth this happened, they realized that it didn't happen on Earth at all.
The signal is coming from outer space. The idea of detonating nuclear weapons in space sounds crazy, but the U.S. military is planning to do exactly that.
The Russians were getting there first to just about everything, and the US desperately wanted to catch up.
Project A119 is a top-secret plan developed by the United States Air Force to test a nuclear bomb on the moon. Nuclear physicist Leonard Rifle is leading a 10-man team researching the effects of nuclear blasts. They intended to use a low-yield warhead, smaller than the Hiroshima bomb, because anything more powerful would be too heavy for available rockets.
Why would anyone explode a nuclear weapon on the moon?
I think this is insane.
Detonating nukes on the moon could offer a way for either superpower to evade their obligations under the Test Ban Treaty.
Isn't this the perfect place to explode an atomic bomb without being spied on?
The initial flash, that optical flash that comes from one of these explosions, wouldn't be visible. They could hide it. But over time, there'd be a large plume, and that large plume would wind up expanding beyond the moon, and it would produce very high-energy protons and gamma rays.
The Vela satellite detected a burst of gamma rays, apparently coming from the vicinity of the moon. On Earth, they are a clear sign of a nuclear detonation. But the Soviets deny all responsibility for the bursts of radiation in space. The source of the gamma rays remains a mystery for more than 5 years. A breakthrough comes when a later generation of Vela satellite, equipped with longer-range sensors, detects another burst.
Researchers realized that these gamma rays come from energetic explosions in distant galaxies.
Gamma ray bursts are created when stars much, much bigger than our sun wind up dying, using up all of their fuel and exploding.
These cataclysmic events send storms of gamma rays hurtling through space. To scientists looking at the data from the early Vela satellites, it looks as if the radiation originates from the moon, because that's as far as their sensors can see.
What they think is evidence of secret Soviet nuclear tests is actually the most powerful destructive force in the universe.
I'm sure someone, somewhere, had the idea of blowing up a nuclear weapon on the moon. But I think we can all be glad that nobody was actually crazy enough to do it.
NASA's ongoing exploration of our solar system continues to uncover new mysteries. Advances in science offer answers to decades-old questions. Our own planet still behaves in ways we struggle to understand. And space still holds deadly surprises.